Welcome to Women in the Middle Entrepreneurs, the podcast that gives you an unfiltered behind-the-scenes look at what it's really like being a woman in the middle who's over 50 and following her entrepreneurial dreams. Grab a superhero cape, girlfriend, because you deserve one. I'm your host, Master Certified Life Coach and Midlife Mentor, Suzy Rosenstein, and I am excited to inspire you with interviews that feature all of this midlife amazingness. Let's go. Hey there, welcome back to the show. We have a really exciting interview ahead of us today about being on a mission to educate women about perimenopause and menopause. So today you'll be meeting Sue Page, a woman in the middle entrepreneur who's a nutrition and health coach and is helping peri and menopausal women feel fabulous again, which is so great. Welcome to the show, Sue. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I know we're going to have a great conversation about your midlife entrepreneurial story. We're going to be talking about your business, what's going really well, also what midlife issues might be getting in your way to some extent and are challenging for you in your life as well as being a business owner. I just love talking about this intersection. So why don't you kick it off with telling us a little bit about your journey to becoming an entrepreneur and exactly what you do?
Sure. So really, my journey started with my, when I started perimenopause. I was in my early 40s and honestly didn't have a clue what was happening to me. There was the odd change in my periods, but for me, one of the major symptoms was brain fog. And I found myself walking into business meetings and being confronted with a younger generation. I worked with mass retail, so I would sell to the big five retailers, and so as you go in and they bring in new buyers, everyone suddenly looked a lot younger than me. And I suddenly wondered why I didn't understand them or I couldn't respond in conversation. And for an English woman living in the States, that was a massive challenge. I've been literally built a career on having a British accent and words were my power. And I just felt lost. And that made me, lost all my confidence. I was very anxious, a little bit panicky about going and doing meetings and just didn't feel that I was capable of it. And
you know what you say about the words being your power? Because of course you do have a delightful accent. We American, I'm a dual citizen, American and Canadian, but I grew up in the States. We just love the British accent.
Oh, you love it.
We do. We really do. So exciting. So that's so interesting. That's something that you really relied on and took pleasure in kind of wasn't working for you anymore.
No, and it just stopped with no warning. And I was like, what the hell is happening to me? And it actually took a cousin of mine. I was back home in the UK and I was staying with her and I'd gone up and down her stairs about 15 times. And she said, have you found it yet? And I said, what? She said, whatever it was you've been looking for. And I said, well, did you notice that? And she said, that's your menopause line. I said, what? I'm 43 or whatever I was. What are you talking about? But that was a trigger for me. And then I started to research and I started to read. And one of the books was actually by Dr. Isabel Mosconi called The XX Brain. And what she's been doing, she's been a lifelong researcher in looking at the impact of estrogen and menopause on brain health. And the more I read about this, the more enraged I became. As well, why don't we know about this? Why isn't anybody warning us? We think, menopause, so we're going to get some hot flashes and our periods are going to stop. Nobody tells us, nobody prepares us. And so I just sort of started to dive into it. And I just thought, oh God, I have to get the word out. I have to talk to people. And how do I do this? And I tried to find a way or think through a way that I could utilize my existing career. Like I said, I worked with retail. I had connections into, the big guys like Amazon and Costco and membership bases. I was like, oh God, we need to talk. We need to be communicating with these women, but it was just too big. And also you're treading a very fine line with healthcare, and HIPAA. And so I kind of just went back into my hole and, I was very discontent with work. To be honest, I was coasting, and, I could have just stayed there. I could have just sort of stayed and kind of rotted away in the corner, but it just felt that there was something more. And really the turning point for me was COVID, because all of a sudden I went from traveling every other week to being at home and suddenly had this realization that I was actually someone that worked really well with a routine and a schedule. It's like, but this is amazing. And I actually I was turning 50 and, doing that typical midlife thing where oh God, I've got to lose weight because it's my 50th birthday and I need to look a certain way. Therefore, I'll go out and do, an hour of cardio and I'll restrict my calories. And nothing was working. I would beat myself up day in, day out, and nothing worked. So I actually started to work with a coach. And that process for me, and she was a body recomposition coach. But what that led to was just a complete turnaround for me, really. It absolutely opened up my world. And it was like the final piece that I needed to understand, okay, I have all of this information about menopause. And I know that the average woman on the street is not reading all the books and doing all the research that I've done.
Oh, true. Yeah.
And now there's something tangible that I can work towards, that I can find a way and I can go and help other women so that they don't have to struggle like I did and be dismissed by their doctors and just wonder what on earth is going on. So it kind of just neatly collided. And I think with a lot of us with COVID, that realization is like, there's just way more things in life that are important than, what you've been doing for the last 25 years.
It's so true. Like COVID was brutal in so many ways and continues to be brutal, but it really provided a wake-up call, some space for just some thinking, even foggy as it might have been, to hear what you're actually thinking. Like it just quieted things down. That's amazing that happened for you. And of course, like so many of us, including me, we didn't even know that there was a thing called coaching for most of our lives because it didn't exist. And then when we found help, and it was such effective help, like for you, it was like, oh my God, it was like that missing piece of the puzzle about what's available and how you can help people. And yeah, for me too, it's a similar kind of thing, not with menopause, but menopause, I share your experience. It was confusing. And it seems so weird that we're so well informed. And this was like a big mystery. It was just a big mystery. And I didn't have the brain fog right away. Of course, I have. It did come eventually. But I had some mood swings. And there were two mood swings that I never had mood swings in my period for decades. It's just all my friends were having mood swings. I never experienced that. But I had two mood swings with such anger, and it seemed like an out-of-body experience. But it was just like, what is going on here? It was like watching myself behave in a way that was weird. I don't even remember what I was yelling about because I'm sure it wasn't that important. And then I talked to my doctor, and even at that point, I didn't understand what it was. And then she took some tests and my readings and whatever and she said, that's probably was perimenopause. It all makes sense now. But agreed, most of us don't appreciate it. We're not prepared for it. We're not even curious about it. It's just, it just kind of creeps up.
Exactly. And I think so many of us think, 50, no periods, hot flashes. Your experience, you were actually very lucky that you had a doctor that recognized that, because that's part of the problem is that the medical community, both here and in the UK, they're not trained. Right? They don't have training in menopause, so they don't really know what to do with us. And, that's what I found is that I just kept getting closed doors. And I was aware of hormone therapy because my mother had been on it for many, many years. And I thought, well, actually, I think I want to go down this route. But then throughout that process, I realized you've got to become an advocate for your own health. And you've got to challenge, because you've got an individual there, as a doctor that may not actually know as much as you do. And you know your body better than anybody. I think also our generation, we were brought up not to challenge authority.
Absolutely.
Right. And so
you're so right.
He was the doctor. So, the doctor says something to you and says, no, I'm not going to prescribe that. Well, off you go with your tail between your legs. And actually, no, you understand your risk. That's part of one of the things I coach is that education, so that you know that you have options, right? There are choices available to you. And then if you want to go and have that conversation with your doctor, here's how to do it.
So good. So what was it like for you to make a decision to leave a guaranteed income and career path and open the door to the wild world of becoming an entrepreneur?
It's still scary. It's still very scary. I was very tightly wrapped in that warm corporate blanket,
Yes.
And especially being in the US and benefits. Healthcare. Yeah. So not only having I was very well compensated. So I had a good salary and I had very good benefits. Literally nothing was out of pocket, which is, pretty much unheard of. And you kind of have this conversation with yourself, like, oh my God, is this the right thing for me to do? Or am I absolutely crazy? And I'm very fortunate. It's just me and my husband. We never had, deliberately never had kids. We never wanted them. But through COVID, we were living in this big ass house that we'd built and renovated and we loved. But then we thought, why do we need this? All this space and paying ridiculous property taxes here in New Jersey. And I said to him, I don't want to work like this anymore. And my job, I was the main breadwinner. I said, I don't want to do it. And he said, well, why not? I just don't want to do it. If I look at things thinking I'm going to spend up until retirement doing this, it just doesn't make me happy. And actually, I've found my purpose. I know what I should be doing. And he went to work, and then the following day he called me and went, you know what, babe, let's just sell the house. I was like, oh my God, I can't. We love this house. We love it. And
Sue, I'm beside myself with this story. I mean, for you to have the insight that, like, it's one thing to feel career angst, which you'd been slowly sorting out through your own awareness of your own health, but to question something that you've been on autopilot with, the mindset to have created what you had, a beautiful home that you were very proud of and was really an anchor for you for so long. It was also directly related to decisions you made about your career. So for you to have the ability to see, oh my God, if I want something else, some of these things might have to change. Even something I thought would never change was really something.
Yeah. It's funny when people say that to me, because sometimes I think, oh God, I should be am I far enough along or, in the business? But people say that, you had a vision, you implemented it. And the mortgage was, and because we had our house on a 10-year mortgage, so our payment was huge and it was totally dependent on my job. And it was just a big weight. It was a massive weight around my neck. And I think, again, that realization of actually, you don't have to do this. And it goes back again to our upbringing. Buy the biggest house, get the biggest mortgage, get the fastest car, and don't retire until you've paid all of it off. And so, like I say, we don't have kids, so we're very lucky in that we have that flexibility. And we just thought, let's just, we can change our lifestyle.
Yeah.
Change so that we can start to do more of what we want to do, because if not now,
when? Right, exactly. And that's the beauty of turning 50. I mean, 50 is a gift in so many ways, but for many, it's jarring, right? And it's jarring enough that you start to ask yourself a few different questions, especially because you're so sensitive to the passage of time. And then that helps you be more intentional if you want it, if you're ready to actually ask yourself what you want. So it sounds like, without looking at an actual bank statement, it sounds like that decision freed up a lot of cash flow for you to make other decisions.
Yeah. And it's so interesting because we're living in a rented apartment, and it's almost like I've gone back, we're like the oldest swingers in town. It's a great building, but we are, but then there's still that conversation in your head. It's like, oh God, now I'm paying out monthly rent. Is that the right thing to be doing with my money?
Right.
The flip side of that is that I have, I know exactly what our outgoings are. And if something goes wrong, I pick up the phone and somebody comes to fix it. I was like, actually, I'm quite enjoying this,
And it's the ultimate freedom and flexibility. And so many of us are looking for more flexibility. And as an entrepreneur, you can get to a point where you create the flexibility that you want, but it's also challenging for so many of us. We want the flexibility, but then because we're so passionate about what we're doing, it ends up not always being as flexible as what we want. But you created flexibility in another part of your life, which is really exciting. I love this part of your story. Okay. Now, another thing that you talked about in your pre-notes is some of the things that have come up for you as challenges while you're growing your business at this age. One of the things you talked about is imposter syndrome. So I wondered if you could share a little bit about how that's showing up for you.
Oh, it's huge. I think that's my biggest problem. And it's so funny. I think one of the other things I responded to one of your questions is that for myself, I love my 50s. I feel awesome about my 50s. So personally, I feel I've never felt better. There's amazing confidence and fit and healthy. And yet I still have this issue with the imposter syndrome. And, I think also added to that, I spent 25 plus years in a very similar role in pretty much one category in the retail industry. So I knew everything. And I was a resident expert there. And now it's like I'm new to this. And when I trust myself and I know that I'm coming from the right place, and ultimately all I want to do is to be able to help other women. And I am helping other women, which feels amazing. But sometimes I get into that mindset of, oh God, why do they want me? Why would they choose me? I haven't been doing this very long. Then they want someone with more experience. And all of this negative chatter comes in, so, and that filters through to how I communicate, what I'm doing on social media, how I charge for things, so that whole kind of knowing your worth is a challenge. And when I first started, I worked with a lot of friends and family, and oh yeah, sure, I'll give them like mates rates, or and it's just such a dichotomy for me, because I know a lot, and I have enough that I can help people, and I've worked with women and we've got fantastic results. And then there's this side. It's like we have coaching Suzy and we have business Suzy, and they're not. They don't talk to each other.
Well, I think what I also hear you saying is, again, this comes up with so many of us, is that you don't give yourself credit for being wiser. You're just giving yourself credit for being older, but you're separating out your experience from your past and all of your wisdom, not recognizing and appreciating and really valuing the crossover. So it's not just what you know about menopause, but it's what you know about life, about being a woman, about aging, about navigating as a professional and making a contribution. Like there's so many things that but in your mind, it's separate.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
So good. I mean, so challenging, but so good that you've been able to articulate it, and at least you're able to work on it. Another thing that you noted is that you're not great at separating yourself from your business. So how does that show up?
I think, again, and this is interesting as well. It's how people view me, about the confidence with it. So, I was in sales, and I was in not only sales, but relationship management. So people bought because of me, right? Absolutely. Yeah, sure, that was a great product, but they bought because of me. And so I know from that background that you don't drop an email and everyone suddenly floods to you and throws their credit card at you, right? It's a process.
Sue, you don't do that? Come on, really?
It doesn't happen. And yet, when it doesn't happen with 40, 50 Fabulous, so why doesn't anyone want to talk to me? I'm out here doing good, and I'm, waving the flag for women, and oh my God, how could you not want to talk to me? And I take it really personally. And I suppose I find it difficult to separate because I feel so passionate about it. And I know I'm doing, my own little part of the world. I'm doing good in the world, and I want to be able to do more. And I don't understand why won't you embrace me? And so that it's very interesting. And I try and kind of coach myself through it. And I haven't found the answer to that yet.
Well, you're on to yourself, which is the first part of the battle. That's for sure. I guess the thing that's really coming out, though, even though sometimes you struggle with confidence, inside, it sounds like you really are confident that you're able to help people. So there's, that part of the way you're thinking just hasn't reconciled, but you have it. But as you say, you're keeping that part separate. On the other hand, you're not good at separating your business from yourself. So I think you're close, but it's all a little mixed up a little bit, and it's still causing a problem. And thank you for being so transparent about that, because I really believe that anybody listening right now can most likely relate to exactly what you've said. So as far as noticing that you are a woman over 50 and that you are an entrepreneur, what do you think is the most comfortable and the most uncomfortable part of aging and moving in this direction, or one or the other?
I can definitely talk to the most comfortable part.
Sure, let's do that.
Sure. I just think that, and I call it the subtle art of not giving a shit. It tends to happen, I think, for many women somewhere like mid to late 40s, but I think it comes to all of us. So that idea of, from my corporate life, caring about what people thought, how I dressed, how I should present myself, I had to realize that I spoke in a certain way. I had a reputation for being a certain way because I worked in a very male-orientated industry. And, that person wasn't actually me. I just had to be the loudest voice in the room. to make myself heard. So when I pull that out and I become my true self with the pink hair, and, I got my first tattoo at 50 and I'm just out here, like, living my best life. But the confidence that comes with that and releasing all of that energy, being worried what people think about me is absolutely huge.
Oh, and the other thing that I hear you saying is it's not just releasing those thoughts, but it's also being in a male dominated sector. And now you don't have to worry about that as much either. And that's like that's a lot when we don't have to worry about that. It's just so much a part of who we are growing up in that culture.
Do you know, it's so funny that you mentioned that, because I haven't thought about that, because now I'm just surrounded by this amazing female energy. And what I also adore about running my own business and being, entrepreneurial is there's so much collaboration.
Yes.
Nobody's stabbing me in the back anymore, trying to climb over me. It's just so nice. And there's great conversations, and how can we help each other? And, just being, I think, more, inventive with ideas, and much more creative, and having a much more creative space. It's definitely, it's gentle. It's lovely.
Yeah. I totally agree. Totally agree. And that was one of the things that really surprised me about. First, I thought about it, well, it must be because I'm an entrepreneur, but no, I think it's because I'm an entrepreneur in the women's space. I agree. Like it's both. It's both. But yeah. Now, one other thing you did talk a little bit about was guilt. And I hear guilt coming up with a lot of the women that I'm talking to. So the way you put it was around work-life balance. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about, should you be guilty? Should you be working all hours of the day? If you don't feel guilty, what's all that about? So what do you think?
I don't know. It's an interesting one, but one of the things I'm very good at is boundaries. And that's, I think, again, that's coming into like being in your 50s and being in midlife and being able to put solid boundaries in. And so my work-life balance is really good. There's really no complaints, and I can work from anywhere, and I can basically do, whatever I want to do, which is amazing. And there's a part of me that says, well, should I be working until 10 o'clock every night? Am I actually putting enough effort into it? And maybe I'm not. And I think that comes down to aligning my goals and my strategy. And that's the other side, I think, where, I'm not fully there in terms of being if I could say a true entrepreneur. I don't know what the definition is that, there's a beginner. I think I'm still at beginner level. And so strategically, I kind of flounder a little bit. And I've been very lucky because with my client base, it's pretty much been word of mouth. So I've managed to kind of build this without really doing too much. So if I sit here and say, what am I doing today to bring in new clients? Yeah. And then, that's that whole discussion that I have in my head. It's like, okay, well, should I be out here like pounding the phones and doing emails and whatever until 10 o'clock at night? And it all compounds back into what I was saying earlier, the imposter syndrome. It's like, well, I sent out 50 emails and no one responded to me. Well, why the hell? It's this vicious circle.
Well, that's what they say about marketing, is that 50% of marketing works. The only problem is you don't know which 50% it is.
Yeah. Yeah. So there is that, I do think, gosh, am I putting enough effort into it? And then there's the other part of me that says, well, you know what? I'm very happy.
Yeah. So it's really becoming really confident and clear about your personal goals and aspirations and how you define success.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's a key thing for me, is I need to define that. I need to have more of a goal. I think that's strategically, it's like, okay, well, this is, if it's a 5-figure month, then that's great. But what does that get me? And actually, if I 2x'd that, can I do that? And then where would I be?
Yeah. And do you want that?
Yeah.
That's the part that most of us aren't really clear about. I don't know about most, many. Let's just say many, because then, you talked about imposter syndrome, but there's also compare and despair. And, when you're in the entrepreneurial community, it's very exciting to hang with other entrepreneurs. And some entrepreneurs are very comfortable talking about, they're very transparent about what's going well, what's not going well, and income. And that can bring up a whole lot of other things. So figuring out what success means to you is such a critical part of the puzzle.
And up until the last couple of years, it was always financial. Always for me. I was very, very money driven. So it's a very interesting shift. When I
Yeah.
actually think, well, and it's not that we've socked away millions, I cannot go off and live the life of Riley, but I think we've done okay. But it just, I don't know. Did you see the movie Nomadland?
And no, but maybe I should.
Yeah, there's a scene in it where they're talking about how they, how come they're living out on the road and what are they doing? And they talk about this one guy and this story of how he'd worked 35 years in this one company and he was due to retire and he bought his sailboat and it was sitting in the driveway. And like a week before he was due to retire, he had a heart attack. And the guy in HR went to see him and they were talking about his 401k. And the following day he died. Right? This is not a true story. It's just a story in the film.
Okay.
And then but when they told this story, and then they said the moral of the story is don't leave your sailboat in the driveway. And my husband and I looked at each other, and that's literally become our motto.
That's so good.
Isn't it cool? It's like, yeah, because otherwise, because what are we waiting for? How much money do we need? How much time do we actually need? There isn't actually, an answer to that. You can horrify yourself by reading all these, Barron's financial reports about, oh, you need to be saving 5% of your salary. Like, oh, okay, I screwed that one up.
It's a very personal question, and so many don't really address it. And one of the things I always work with my clients on is reassessing that, like checking in with yourself at different points of your life, because things change. If you have kids, your goals with them, cash flow related to it, might be different in 5 years. If you have aging parents, there's all the issues related to that. If you have personal goals where you want to do a certain thing by a certain time, for example, if you had goals about wanting to do something that was incredibly active, maybe physically, you'd really want to do that sooner rather than later, because who knows when you're going to need a knee replacement or takes care of somebody who had a knee replacement. Mm-hmm. So there's so many things to consider when you are, I think, on the other side of 50, really being more sensitive and more intentional about the way you spend your valuable time on the planet.
Absolutely.
So what are you waiting for? It's a great question. And I love that. Don't leave your sailboat in the driveway. It's so good. Yeah. So good. All right. So what about taking care of yourselves in midlife? I know you feel so strongly about it. And that's one of the reasons that you're so motivated to help people understand menopause and how it affects them. Why do you think it's so important to take care of yourself in midlife?
Oh, it really is. And I firmly believe that how our health is now is indicative of how we're going to age. And my coaching approach is rooted in the belief that every woman should be empowered and educated to be able to take control of her midlife health and to feel amazing. So whatever that might mean to that individual, like we all have different goals. So I don't kind of give a packaged program. I work with it. I mean, probably what we do is very similar, right? But I'm working on the health side. So we're looking at what are those health goals? And for some women, it may be sleep, some digestion or whatever that might be. But I think we really have to take a step back and grow up a little bit, right?
Because, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by growing up a little bit?
And I'm speaking from my personal opinion and from, friends and relatives and people that have surrounded me for most of my life. And we've spent our lives dieting. We've spent our lives restricting. We've spent our lives beating our bodies up. We haven't honored our bodies. We haven't taken that inward look and really started to appreciate our health. And this is the other thing about midlife, right? So you start to question your own mortality a little bit, but health is everything. And this is one of the things when I'm onboarding clients and they talk to me about the cost of my program. So it seems expensive. I'm like, well, does it really? What price do you put on your health? So I think that the idea of actually tuning into your body, understanding and wanting to understand how it works, and also knowing it's not too late and you're not too old. You can do anything. Our bodies are incredible machines. They repair themselves, right? They're amazing machines. But you've got to start looking after it. If you look after it properly, it's going to give back to you. And for me, I want to be one of these little ladies that like running down the beach, when she's 85. I just, age is but a number. But that took me until I was 50 to realize, because when I was 40, I was heavily overweight and just thought, oh, I'm too old to do anything about it. So I think we tell ourselves these stories. I can't do that. I can't because I'm old. I can't. They say, well, is it I can't or I won't?
Exactly.
And a lot of the time, that realization that we don't like to be told that our habits are creating our bad health. It's a difficult conversation to have with anybody and with yourself.
Yeah.
Right? So,
so true.
And so many women come to me, it's like, well, I've tried everything. Nothing's working. It's my hormones. You know what? Hormones play into it, but they're not making you gain weight, right? So you have to go back. You have to be really honest with yourself and look at your habits and your behaviors and see how and why you're eating, and stop restricting, stop trying to fix something in 30 days, stop looking for a magic supplement that's going to, make menobelly disappear or whatever hideous marketing term it is, and just grow up and acknowledge that your health is a never ending journey.
Yes.
Stop focusing on the destination, which is always to lose 20 pounds and tone up.
Right.
And let's just focus on how you feel, not what you weigh, how you feel.
So good. So how can somebody best get in touch with you? What's the best way? Well,
my website is 4050fabulous.com. And I'm also on Instagram as 4050fabulous. And that's spelled out. So not numerical.
Got it.
About 4050fabulous.com.
Amazing. Sue, thank you so much for taking the time from your day, sharing all this. And I love chatting with somebody with such a fun accent and so many amazing things to share. You're so passionate with helping so many of us deal with something that's so common, but yet still so mysterious. I totally love what you're doing. You're amazing. So thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed it.
All right. That's it for now. If you're listening and love what you're hearing, like and subscribe. Reviews are great too and much appreciated. And if you're a woman in the middle who's 50 or over, entrepreneur, and would like to come on the show, please go to www.midlifeinterviews.com and fill out an application. We'd love to have you on to share your story. Thanks so much for listening. It's never too late for you to put yourself first on your agenda. I'm Suzy Rosenstein, and I'll talk to you again soon. Now, real quick before we say goodbye, if you are connecting with this show, I'd love to invite you to a happiness breakthrough coaching session. It's my laser-focused coaching call that will help you get clear about what's getting in your way as a woman in the middle entrepreneur and confident about your next steps to more happiness in your next chapter. Head over to www.nextchapterbreakthrough.com. Talk to you soon.